political landscape in Minnesota, which has never occurred before in American history, and it is so strange and so bizarre. When you consider the fact that back in June, there was a deranged gunman that killed a bunch of Democrats, then left a note in his car, which all but predicted what's happening right now. I'm surprised more people haven't connected the dots and there's not more people talking about this, because with rumors now swirling around that Amy Klobuchar is going to be running for Minnesota governor and then is going to appoint Tim Walz to fill her vacant Senate seat, making Tim Walz the acting senator in her place, this actually coincides almost perfectly with the claims that were made by a deranged gunman that killed a bunch of Democrat lawmakers and then left a note in his car where he basically said that Tim Walz put him up to it and that there was a big politically motivated plan behind it that would result in Tim Walz being a senator. I'm not saying the allegations are true, but I am saying that the longer time goes on from the shootings back in June and the allegations made, the more it does appear that there might be something to it. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break this down. But first, be sure to like the video, subscribe, and turn those bell notifications on so you never miss another update. And if you want to support the channel and save a bunch of money at MyPillow.com, then use promo code Nick at checkout. Now, let's talk about this. So we've had now Tim Walz announced that he's not going to be seeking re-election for governor in Minnesota. Basically said that he's not going to be running. Okay, but that doesn't exclude the possibility of being appointed to fill Amy Klobuchar's position as a senator. Because in Minnesota, the way the law works, okay, let's say Tim Walz doesn't seek re-election. Amy Klobuchar runs for governor. That leaves her Senate seat vacant. And under Minnesota law, she gets to fill that position by appointment. That's how the law works in Minnesota. So she would be able to appoint somebody to replace her, and then there would be a special election to fill that seat permanently, which in the most likely scenario, Tim Walz would then be elected senator after being appointed temporarily by Amy Klobuchar. That's how it would go down. But what's interesting about this, I want you guys to think about it, okay? For all intents and purposes, being a senator is like a much higher office than being a governor. And historically, this is extremely rare. Since 1900, only about 21 sitting or former U.S. senators have been elected governor of a state. Only 21 in the last century. And what's even more rare, in fact, it has never happened in American history, is for a senator to step down in the middle, in fact, the beginning of their 6-year term, to run to become a governor. That's never happened, ever. Amy Klobuchar was reelected in 2024 to serve a 6-year term until 2030 and is stepping down to become a governor. It's very strange that this is happening. And there is now rumors that there is a deal that's been cut behind the scenes. We had Jesse Waters report on this.
Governor Walz, though, you'll notice, Jesse, careful to say that he will not run for public office again. However, Senator Amy Klobuchar could still appoint him to her Senate seat. Also interesting to note that Senator Klobuchar, in her announcement, did not mention President Trump today by name. She did say that she was going to root out fraud, but that's hard for many of us to believe. She's been a senator for nearly 20 years. She has been silent on the issue of Somali fraud in Minnesota.
Wait,
Jesse.
so Liz, are you saying there's a deal between Walz and Amy? She's going to appoint him to be a senator?
Okay, so that's the rumor that's flying around. The Gateway Pundit reported this as well. Amy Klobuchar running for Minnesota governor will appoint Tim Walz to her vacant Senate seat. And so this is where things get extremely interesting, because what's playing out right now coincides very closely to the allegations made by the deranged gunman Vance Belter back in June of 2025.
A grand jury has now indicted an accused assassin in what prosecutors call an act of political extremism. Vance Belter faces a half-dozen federal charges, including the murders of the former House Speaker and her husband.
Aaron, the sprawling handwritten letter was addressed to the FBI director and includes that confession writing, quote, "I am the shooter at large." It also includes what acting U.S. attorney calls several delusional claims. Among those, Belter says Governor Tim Walz ordered him to kill Minnesota senators. He claims it was part of a conspiracy to get the governor elected to the U.S. Senate. The U.S. attorney today said he wasn't sure if Belter believed that delusion or wrote this to try and excuse his crimes. Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark were killed in their home in the early hours of June 14th. Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette were shot more than a dozen times between the two of them. And we learned today their daughter Hope Hoffman was incredibly close to becoming a fifth victim.
Okay, so Vance Belter, he killed Melissa Hortman, the House Speaker, and her husband. He went to the home of two other Democrats and shot them, but they survived. But according to reports, and this is where things get interesting, he also went to the home of other Democrats that weren't home. Vance Belter left a letter in his car that he abandoned after the events where he confessed to being the killer and said that Tim Walz put him up to it. Tim wanted me to kill Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith, the other Democrat senator in the state, because Tim wants to be a senator and he doesn't trust blank, and we can assume that's either Tina Smith or Amy Klobuchar. Tim doesn't trust blank to retire as planned and thinks she is going to stay on at the last minute. With Amy plus Tina gone, Tim would get one of the general Senate seats, and blank wants to be governor. And Keith Ellison would be rewarded with a lieutenant governor's position. And so this letter is him pleading with Director Kash Patel, saying that they want to hurt his family. He's willing to cooperate, but he wants to speak directly with Kash Patel. In exchange, he'll tell everything, but he wants some level of protection. Now, this guy, Vance Belter, who Tim Walz claims he doesn't know, he's never spoken to, he denies any association with, was actually appointed by Governor Tim Walz to a 4-year term in 2019. So he was essentially part of the Walz administration. He was an appointee. Okay, he was previously appointed as a business and industry representative to the 60-member nonpartisan advisory board. And he was appointed in 2016 by Governor Mark Dayton, then reappointed by Governor Walz to serve a 4-year term in 2019. So this guy that Tim Walz claimed he never knew, he never met, he never spoke to, he was actually appointed by Governor Tim Walz. And so this guy, Vance Belter, claimed that Tim Walz sat him down and basically said, I want you to kill these people to create a vacancy in the Senate so that Tim Walz could become a senator. And now we see months later, Tim Walz, under massive pressure and scrutiny, he's decided he's not going to seek re-election for a third term to serve as Minnesota's governor. Amy Klobuchar has announced that she's going to be running for governor instead and creating a vacancy in the Senate, and there's rumors swirling around that she's going to appoint Tim Walz to fill that vacancy until there's a special election where a senator will be elected. And the chances are very, very high that Tim Walz will be the one selected to fill that vacancy because it just politically makes sense. Given that he served as governor, it would be the most logical choice for her to make because he's not seeking re-election and he's a widely known political figure in the state. And so this is just a very, very strange set of coincidences when at the time of the shooting, there was absolutely no reason to believe that Amy Klobuchar would create a vacancy or that Tim Walz wouldn't seek re-election. It's almost as if Vance Belter had some ability to predict the future and knew some insider details on aspirations that the politicians had. Because Amy Klobuchar was just re-elected in 2024 to serve a 6-year term until 2030, and there was absolutely no public indication whatsoever to indicate to anybody that she would not remain senator until 2030. So this is at the very least a very unprecedented set of circumstances and a very strange set of coincidences where, even despite Amy Klobuchar still being alive, things are still rearranging in the way that Vance Belter said that Tim Walz wanted them to go. Okay? I'm not, again, claiming that the allegations are true. But I do certainly hope that the FBI is involved in the case of Vance Belter and that he's being spoken to. And if there is something that he knows, that he's cooperating in giving that information over to the FBI and the Trump administration. Because, ladies and gentlemen, people lost their lives. And if there's any legitimacy to any of it, then we need to get to the bottom of it. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you guys think about this down in the comments section. Leave a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.
Well, on to this. As Brooke mentioned, the FBI director, he's now leading the federal investigation